Princess Diana's story is one of profound transformation, from a young woman caught in the turmoil of a broken family to becoming one of the most iconic figures in modern royal history. Her life was marked by both extraordinary privilege and immense personal pain. In her, the world saw not just a princess, but a deeply compassionate woman who would become the people's princess, admired for her warmth, empathy, and grace. But to understand how Diana arrived at this remarkable position, we must delve into her early years, the struggles she faced, and the experiences that shaped her into the beloved figure she would become. A troubled childhood, the impact of family drama. Born on July 1, 1961, Diana Frances Spencer was the fourth of 5 children in the Spencer family. Her father, John Spencer, held the title of Viscount Althorp, and the family estate was one of the largest and most prestigious in Britain. From the outside, it seemed like the Spencer family lived a life of privilege and wealth. However, the reality of Diana's childhood was far from the fairy tale the world would come to associate with her later life. When Diana was just 7 years old, her parents' marriage began to unravel. Her mother, Frances, left the family when Diana was a child, and this marked the beginning of a series of emotional upheavals. Diana's father, cold and distant, seemed more concerned with managing the family estate than tending to the emotional needs of his children. The divorce, one of the most high-profile of its time, left deep emotional scars on Diana, who would later speak about the effects of witnessing the breakdown of her parents' marriage. After the divorce, Diana's father remarried to Rain, Countess of Dartmouth, a woman Diana and her siblings did not take to kindly. Diana herself famously described her new stepmother as acid rain, due to the cold and critical nature she perceived in her. Rain's introduction into the family seemed to worsen the rift between Diana and her father, creating a tense household dynamic that made the young Diana feel isolated and misunderstood. The emotional detachment of her father and the strained relationship with her stepmother were to become defining factors in her early life, contributing to a sense of abandonment and loneliness. Yet, in spite of the challenges, Diana's early years were not entirely defined by grief and bitterness. She developed a keen sense of empathy that would go on to define much of her public persona. Finding her own path, Diana's early career and independence. As Diana transitioned into her teenage years, she sought a path that was distinctly her own. While many young women of her social standing were preoccupied with the glittering world of high society, attending debutante balls and charity galas, Diana chose a different route. After completing her education at Riddlesworth Hall and later West Heath School, where she was known more for her caring nature than academic excellence, Diana turned her attention to more grounded pursuits. At 19, she took a job as a kindergarten teacher at the Young England School in Pimlico, London. In an era where most young women in her social class would have been expected to focus on finding a suitable husband or participating in society events, Diana's choice to work as a teacher was both unconventional and remarkable. For a young woman who would later become one of the most famous faces in the world, it was a humble beginning. She lived in a flat in London with friends, far from the grand palaces and royal expectations that would soon become her reality. Working with young children, many of whom came from disadvantaged backgrounds, Diana developed a deeper understanding of the challenges people face in life. She spent her days changing diapers, teaching nursery rhymes, and comforting children who needed extra care and attention. It was in this environment that Diana's genuine compassion blossomed, and it shaped the way she would engage with the world in the years to come. She didn't shy away from the real world of work, and the challenges of caring for others gave her a sense of fulfillment that she would carry with her throughout her life. But despite this grounded start, Diana was not immune to the allure of her aristocratic background. She was still a beautiful young woman, and as she entered her 20s, her striking looks began to attract the attention of London's high society. Enter Prince Charles, the royal romance. In 1977, Diana's life would take a dramatic turn when she met Prince Charles, the heir to the British throne. Charles was 12 years older than Diana, and though their initial meeting did not seem to promise a future romance, it marked the beginning of an intense and tumultuous relationship. At the time, Diana was still living in her modest London flat and had not yet become the international figure she would later be. Prince Charles, on the other hand, was already well established in the public eye, and the pressure on him to find a suitable bride was immense. The relationship between Diana and Charles blossomed quickly, and soon rumors of a royal romance began to surface. For Diana, this was the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to escape her troubled family life and embrace a fairy tale of her own. She had grown up admiring the royal family from afar, and the possibility of becoming a princess was an alluring one. However, as the world would come to see, Diana's fairy tale romance would be anything but perfect. The couple's courtship was intensely scrutinized by the press, and Diana, still relatively naive about the intense media attention, was thrust into the spotlight. The People's Princess. Diana's impact on the world. In 1981, Charles and Diana's engagement was officially announced, and the world watched as the couple prepared for their wedding. The wedding, held at St. Paul's Cathedral in London on July 29, 1981, was watched by millions of people around the world and became one of the most iconic moments in royal history. Diana, dressed in her elegant wedding gown, became a symbol of grace and beauty. But behind the scenes, the cracks in her marriage were beginning to show. Despite her personal struggles, Diana became beloved by the public for her genuine compassion and her commitment to charitable causes. She used her position to highlight issues that were important to her, including AIDS awareness, children's hospitals, and landmine removal. Her hands-on approach to charity work, including visiting hospitals, meeting with patients, and raising awareness about pressing issues, made her one of the most relatable and beloved members of the royal family. Diana's popularity continued to soar, and she became known as the People's Princess, a title that reflected her ability to connect with ordinary people in a way that few members of the royal family had ever done. The early days. A princess in the making. Diana Spencer, with her radiant charm and natural beauty, seemed destined for something extraordinary, though few could have anticipated the dramatic twists her life would take. It's almost as if she were destined to be in the royal spotlight, even before she truly understood what that meant. Diana was the youngest of 3 siblings, and though she grew up in aristocratic surroundings, her family wasn't part of the elite circles that frequented the palace. She lived a relatively quiet life at Althorpe House, her family estate in Northamptonshire, but even there, she caught the eye of those who recognized something special in her. In 1977, when Diana was just 16, she made her first appearance on the radar of the British royal family. At the time, Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, was dating her older sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. Diana was merely a teenager, running around the family estate while the adults conversed, unaware that this first meeting would alter the course of history. Blossoming beauty. The summer of 1980. As the years passed, Diana transformed from an awkward teenager into a strikingly beautiful young woman. By the summer of 1980, when Diana was 19, she had grown into her looks and maturity, gaining attention wherever she went. Prince Charles, who had watched her grow up, now saw her in a new light. At a country barbecue that summer, something shifted. Diana caught Charles's eye in a way she never had before. It was a whirlwind that no one, least of all Charles, had expected. He was captivated by her presence, her kindness, and her genuine nature, which contrasted sharply with the more reserved and stiff circles he usually mingled with. Diana was a breath of fresh air, and soon the two were inseparable. Their romance was swift and all-consuming. After only 12 dates, Charles proposed to Diana in February 1981, and she, swept up in the moment and full of excitement, said yes. The public could hardly contain their excitement. They were the perfect couple, or at least they seemed to be. The royal wedding? A dream come true? The world watched in awe as Charles and Diana's wedding day arrived on July 29, 1981. The event was a spectacle, a true fairy tale moment in the history of the British monarchy. The wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral was watched by an estimated 750 million people worldwide. Diana's dress, designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel, was a dream in ivory silk taffeta, adorned with antique lace, and featured a train that stretched a staggering 25 feet. It was the stuff of fairy tales, and as Diana walked down the aisle, the world held its breath, captivated by her elegance, poise, and beauty. But if you looked closely at Diana's face, You might have noticed something in her eyes that no one at the time could have fully understood. Was it the nerves of a young woman about to step into the public eye? Or was it something more? Perhaps a silent recognition that this fairy tale might not be as perfect as it seemed. In the years to come, Diana's own words and actions would suggest that she had some inkling, even at that moment, that things might not turn out the way the world hoped. The early years. A picture of domestic bliss? For a time, it seemed like the perfect royal marriage. Diana and Charles had 2 children, William, born in 1982, and Harry, born in 1984, and Diana was determined to give her sons as normal a life as possible, despite their royal status. She took them out of the palace and ensured they attended school with other children, exposing them to the world beyond the palace walls. It was a modern approach to motherhood, a break from the traditional royal upbringing, and it endeared her to the public. Behind the scenes, however, cracks were beginning to form in Charles and Diana's relationship. Diana was an open book, emotional and expressive, while Charles remained distant, reserved, and steeped in the traditions of royal life. It was a classic case of opposites attracting, but eventually, the differences began to take their toll. The public was blind to the growing tension, choosing instead to focus on the picture-perfect family moments. But the strains in the marriage were becoming undeniable. The other woman, Camilla Parker Bowles. The true test of their relationship, however, came not from their differences but from a third party, Camilla Parker Bowles. For years, Diana had heard rumors of Charles's close relationship with Camilla, who had been a part of Charles's life long before Diana entered the picture. At first, Charles denied the rumors, insisting that Camilla was just a family friend, but Diana's intuition told her otherwise. Diana had a sixth sense, an emotional radar that could detect the hidden truths that others wanted to deny. As the 1980s progressed, what had once been whispers about Charles and Camilla became louder, until it was impossible for Diana to ignore. Despite the public's perception of their marriage as the stuff of dreams, Diana was growing increasingly aware that her marriage to Charles was far from perfect. The affair between Charles and Camilla would eventually tear the royal family apart, but the cracks in the marriage were already evident. The confrontation. Diana takes a stand. The tension reached a boiling point in 1989 when Diana attended a birthday party for Camilla's sister, where she confronted Camilla directly. Diana, by then, had suffered more than most people knew. She was battling an eating disorder, struggling with the constant media scrutiny, and feeling emotionally abandoned by her husband. In this moment, however, she stood strong and faced Camilla with the fire that had become her hallmark. "I know exactly what's going on, so don't treat me like an idiot," Diana told Camilla, calling her out for the affair that had been the source of so much pain in her marriage. This confrontation would be just one of many in Diana's eventual push to reclaim her life and dignity in the public eye. The truth comes out. Andrew Morton's book. In 1992, the world got a glimpse behind the palace walls in a way no one had ever imagined. Andrew Morton's book, Diana. Her true story revealed the explosive secrets that had been simmering beneath the surface of the royal family. The book included revelations of infidelity, jealousy, and betrayal. And most shockingly, it was Diana herself who had cooperated with Morton. Through a series of taped interviews, Diana opened up about her struggles, her loneliness, and the breakdown of her marriage to Charles. She spoke candidly about her eating disorder, her depression, and the emotional pain of being married to a man who was still in love with another woman. The book shook the monarchy to its core. Charles, who had been publicly silent about the contents of the book, was forced to confront the reality of the public's perception of his marriage. But he remained reserved, offering few words of remorse or acknowledgement of the hurt he had caused. Charles confesses, a bombshell interview. In 1994, during an infamous television interview, Prince Charles was forced to address the questions that had been swirling around for years. The public finally heard him admit to his extramarital affair with Camilla. In his typically understated royal manner, Charles explained that both he and Diana had tried to make their marriage work, but it had become irretrievably broken. This was his way of admitting to his infidelity, though it fell far short of a heartfelt confession. The public reaction was swift and harsh. Team Diana grew stronger as Charles's popularity plummeted. The prince, who was once seen as the ideal future king, was now being viewed as a villain in a very public soap opera. Diana, ever the resilient figure, took control of her own narrative. She gave a now iconic interview in 1995, where she famously stated, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." Her words were a punch to the gut, and they earned her the sympathy of the nation. It was clear to the public that Diana had been the true victim in this royal tragedy. The end of the marriage, a painful separation. By 1996, Charles and Diana's marriage was officially over. They divorced, but the damage to the monarchy had already been done. The British royal family, long seen as a symbol of stability and tradition, was now embroiled in scandal. The prince who was destined to rule one day had been revealed as a man who had betrayed the nation's beloved princess. But, as always with the royal family, the story didn't end there. In the summer of 1997, Diana found herself once again in the spotlight. After her separation from Charles, she found love again with Dodi Fayed, the son of a millionaire. The paparazzi, who had once adored her and made the blossoming of Diana's story. As Diana Spencer stepped into the public eye, she quickly captured the attention of not only the British public but the entire world. She seemed like an ordinary young woman who happened to find herself thrust into the extraordinary and often scrutinizing world of British royalty. In 1981, the world witnessed the beginning of what many saw as a fairy tale romance between Princess Diana and Prince Charles. However, like all fairy tales, the reality of their story turned out to be much more complicated than it first appeared. In 1977, Charles, who at that time was still considered the bachelor prince, was dating Diana's older sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. Their courtship seemed to be progressing, though no one expected it to lead to anything long-term. Diana, still a teenager, was busy living her life, far removed from the world of royal duties. It wasn't until 2 years later, in the summer of 1980, when Diana was 19, that the tides would begin to shift. On a warm, sunny afternoon at a country barbecue, Charles first noticed Diana in a completely new light. By then, she had transformed from the awkward young girl into a striking woman, full of grace, charm, and youthful beauty. The royal wedding. A momentous day. On July 29, 1981, the wedding of Princess Diana and Prince Charles took place at St. Paul's Cathedral, London. The entire world watched as the young princess, dressed in an iconic ivory silk gown, walked down the aisle in what would be one of the most famous moments in history. Diana's dress, designed by David and Elizabeth Emanuel, featured intricate antique lace, a voluminous skirt, and a dramatic 25-foot train, capturing the essence of royal grandeur. It was the moment that would be etched in history, a day that seemed to encapsulate all the beauty, glamour, and elegance of a fairy tale wedding. But behind the splendor, the cameras were also capturing something less than perfect. As Diana walked toward the altar, her eyes appeared distant, almost uncertain. Was it simply wedding day nerves? Or did Diana sense that her marriage to Prince Charles might not be as idyllic as she had hoped? The world would later learn that, despite the glamour, the couple's relationship was far from stable. Diana's struggles. Behind the public persona. In the early years of their marriage, there were moments of genuine happiness, particularly as Diana embraced her role as a mother. In 1982, she gave birth to Prince William, followed by Prince Harry in 1984. Diana took her responsibilities as a mother seriously, determined to provide her sons with as normal a life as possible, despite the constraints of royal life. She took them to school, participated in family outings, and often sought to shield them from the strict rules of the monarchy that dominated her own existence. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect family, there was tension. Diana's emotional nature clashed with Charles's more reserved and traditional demeanor. She sought affection and connection, while Charles remained aloof and distant, seemingly more engaged with his royal duties and his lingering attachment to Camilla. The relationship was becoming increasingly strained, yet the public remained unaware of the growing discord. The other woman, Camilla Parker Bowles. As Diana's relationship with Charles faltered, the presence of Camilla Parker Bowles became more prominent. In 1986, Diana and Charles's marriage had begun to crumble under the weight of his affair with Camilla. Although Charles denied it at first, the affair became widely known. Diana, whose instinct told her something was wrong, began to notice the signs. Charles's late nights at work, his distracted demeanor, and the phone calls that would often come at odd hours. In 1989, Diana confronted Camilla in a highly charged encounter at a birthday party for Camilla's sister. Diana, who had suffered in silence for so long, finally found the courage to speak out. She openly confronted Camilla, telling her that she knew about the affair and refusing to pretend otherwise. Diana's response to Camilla was sharp, direct, and unflinching. "I know exactly what's going on, so don't treat me like an idiot." This confrontation marked a turning point in Diana's life as she moved from passive acceptance to taking control of her narrative. The Andrew Morton bombshell, Diana's true story. In 1992, the British public was given an inside look into the royal family's troubles when journalist Andrew Morton published Diana, Her True Story. The book, which was based on interviews with Diana, exposed the many struggles she had endured during her marriage to Charles. It revealed intimate details of Diana's emotional struggles, including her bulimia, her feelings of betrayal, and her deep sadness over the collapse of her marriage. The public, who had once viewed Diana as the epitome of royal grace, now saw her in a more human light, someone who had suffered immensely in a gilded cage. The book also revealed the extent of Charles's affair with Camilla, as well as Diana's own emotional turmoil. While Charles remained silent, the revelation sent shockwaves through the monarchy. Many in the public now felt sympathy for Diana as they learned about the heartbreak she had endured in private. Charles admits to his affair, a monarchy shaken. In 1994, Charles finally admitted to his affair with Camilla. In a television interview, he confessed that his marriage to Diana had become irretrievably broken after both parties had tried, unsuccessfully, to make it work. While his admission confirmed the rumors that had been circulating for years, the public's response was one of shock and disappointment. Charles, the man who was supposed to be the future king, had been unfaithful to the beloved princess. His actions seemed to stain the monarchy in the eyes of many. Diana, who had already suffered immensely, made her own powerful statement in 1995 during a now infamous interview with the BBC's Martin Bashir. In her interview, she said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." This statement, one of the most memorable quotes in royal history, underscored Diana's pain and the public's growing sympathy for her. She was no longer the demure, shy princess. She was a woman who had suffered, fought for her family, and stood up for herself in the face of incredible adversity. The tragic death of Diana, the end of a chapter. On August 31, 1997, Diana's life was tragically cut short in a car accident in Paris. Diana, who had separated from Charles and was involved in a new relationship with Dodi Al-Fayed, was relentlessly pursued by paparazzi. On that fateful night, Diana and Dodi were in a Mercedes-Benz driven by Henry Paul, the deputy head of security at the Ritz Hotel. As they attempted to escape the photographers, their car collided with a pillar in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, killing Dodi and Henri instantly. Diana, critically injured, was rushed to the hospital but died shortly after. The world went into mourning, with millions of people paying tribute to the woman who had captured their hearts. Yet the circumstances surrounding her death have never ceased to raise questions. The paparazzi, the malfunctioning security cameras, and the lingering doubts about the cause of the crash have fueled conspiracy theories that still persist to this day. Some believe that Diana's death was no mere accident, but the result of a larger, more sinister plot. Whether these theories hold any truth or not, they have contributed to the mystique and tragedy surrounding her life and death.